when it comes to the Black Panther side of the MCU, I haven't actually reviewed the first Black Panther film, and so my quick thoughts on the first film is that I think the first film is very well done. I think it's a very well made film. Granted, the CGI in the third act is not great, and I do think the third act is kind of weak. Chadwick Boseman is fantastic as T'Challa. Michael B. Jordan is amazing as Killmonger, and I think Killmonger is a fascinating villain. And overall, I really just enjoy the aesthetic and vibe of that first Black Panther film. Ludwig Göransson's score is amazing. I mean, despite my issues with the third act, when T'Challa and Killmonger are fighting on the train tracks, and the score is playing the sort of Black Panther motif, the dun 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 dun, like, I feel it. I'm like, this is big, this is epic. And that's why I will say Black Panther 1 is a very good, very well-directed film, because Ryan Coogler is a fantastic director. And I love Ryan Coogler as a direction. I've loved pretty much all of his films. I mean, I absolutely love and adore the first Creed film. I mean, that film is, ugh. I do think the first Black Panther film is kind of overrated in the sense of I don't think it should have been nominated for Best Picture. Like, it's a good film, but I don't think it's amazing. And then, of course, a couple of years ago, we had the unfortunate passing of Chadwick Boseman, and, like, that was really upsetting to me from a fan perspective, just because, obviously, I don't know Chadwick Boseman, I don't know his family, but as an actor, you could tell he was hungry, he wanted to do more, he wanted to really just aspire and achieve things in his career. I mean, seeing films like Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, seeing him act, I was just there like, this guy is a powerhouse, I cannot wait to see what he does next, and then just losing him like that, it was upsetting, because you could also tell when it came to the character of T'Challa, he wanted more from Black Panther. He wanted Black Panther to be a force in the MCU. You could tell the MCU was positioning T'Challa to be a force for the MCU. And we lost him. And so making a sequel to Black Panther without Chadwick Boseman, I think, is a really daunting task. And Ryan Coogler does a good job, I think. I'm very conflicted with Wakanda Forever, because at the end of the day, I like it. But I also think as a story, it's missing something that's holding it back from being great. There's a lot of great ideas here on paper, specifically with Shuri trying to manifest her vengeance, becoming the new Black Panther, and seeking revenge against Namor for killing her mother. All that stuff I think is very good. All of the film's themes about loss and that being a motivator, it's all kind of powered by the central loss of T'Challa, and you feel it. And at the end of the day, I think the strongest part of Wakanda Forever for me is Shuri's story, because one of the main concerns I had with Wakanda Forever when I was first going into it was, how are they going to, properly justify Shuri becoming Black Panther? And for the most part, they do. They give her a good enough motive to be the Black Panther, to kill Namor for killing her mother, giving her that vengeance, basically thematically tying her to T'Challa in Civil War. And I was like, oh, that's brilliant. I didn't realize that until the film had to basically spell that out when she was fighting Namor, and she basically had a similar monologue to T'Challa in Civil War when she's confronting Namor, and she's just like, vengeance, blah, blah, blah. As soon as she said the word vengeance, I was like, oh, they're mirroring T'Challa from Civil War. I really like that. But for me, the problem with Shuri's arc is that the film doesn't really treat Shuri as the main protagonist of the film. It's like, she opens the film trying to save T'Challa with the synthetic herb. She fails to do that. She misses her brother's passing. That's a very good moment. But then for like the next 45 minutes, she's not really like the main character doing these things. She's kind of just there whilst other characters are doing things. And that, I think, is one of Wakanda Forever's biggest problems, is that it doesn't really have a central main character until like halfway through, when all of a sudden it's like, oh yeah, this is Shuri's story. For the most part, the film kind of feels like it's a film with just the side characters. It's a story about Okoye, Nakia, Queen Ramonda, Shuri, because the overall story doesn't really kick into gear until after the death of Queen Rwanda, and then all of a sudden Shuri gets her motivation to kill Namor, all that kind of stuff. That's when I'm like, okay, I'm buying this. I'm with Shuri now. This is cool. I like that she's becoming Black Panther for different reasons other than, oh, I have to ascend the throne out of duty. Again, all the stuff they do with Shuri in this, I actually think is really good. I really like how she is a science-based person, and she's sort of fighting the mythology, the spirituality of the Wakandan traditions. She can't really understand the concept of, say, the ancestral plane. She doesn't really buy and embrace the spirituality of the heart-shaped earth, the ancestral plane. And so when she sees someone like Killmonger in the ancestral plane rather than T'Challa and her mother, it's very interesting because it's this very character-driven thing of what does this, science-based person deal with faith? Because having someone that believes in science and doesn't really believe in spirituality, having to confront something that is very spiritually based, is very interesting, and I found that to be a very strong point of Shuri's character arc. And I really wish the film kind of just focused on it a bit more, because we get enough to where Shuri's character arc works. It's good. But I would have rather we cut out the half an hour we spend with Namor and Talokan and Riri Williams and all that, and I would have rather they focus more on Shuri, making this more grounded and more told from her perspective, because the weird thing about Wakanda Forever is that it is both too big and too small at the same time, because we do get the moments of personal reflection from Shuri, we do get the character stuff of her grieving for her brother and her mother, but at the same time, the film deals with this geopolitical thing of the world wants vibranium, but Wakanda is now sort of closing itself off more or something. And this is the problem I have with all the geopolitics in Wakanda Forever, and that is the geopolitics isn't really expanded upon enough. Because the thing with the first Black Panther is that that film ends with T'Challa opening Wakanda up to the rest of the world. He is basically setting a precedent of, we are all one people, we should all be helping one another, building bridges, not tearing it down. Which is really funny because I find people misunderstand the post-credit scene to Black Panther a lot, which is weird because people are just like, oh yeah, Killmonger was right. I was like, no, T'Challa's right. You need to listen to his speech in the post-credit scene of the first Black Panther film, because what he's saying is that, there is no superiority between one race or one nation or whatever. We are all one people. We should all be helping each other, building bridges, and aspire to be one tribe because we are all human at the end of the day. And that is something that Wakanda Forever kind of just neglects or doesn't really address. Because it seems that under the reign of T'Challa's mother, it seems that Wakanda has this weird sort of superiority complex in a way, because there's that whole line of, we don't trust you with vibranium. Only Wakandans are capable of wielding vibranium and all that. And then there's the line in Falcon and the Winter Soldier where it's like the Dora Milaje have the jurisdiction to go wherever they please, and it's kind of like, that's not how that works, especially if you're representing a country. And personally, I would have liked it if someone close to T'Challa, like say Nakia or say Shuri, was questioning them, basically being like, that's not what T'Challa wanted. I don't know, it's a weird one. The film is both large scale and also too small for its own good, and I'm conflicted, because the story they're telling is very simple, but also the film is just really long. Like, a lot of the stuff with Namor and the conflict with Emerald Wakanda is very simple. It's just that the film just spends way too long on Namor's backstory and Shuri and Riri in Talokan, and it's kind of just like, get to the point, we're kind of just dragging our feet here. Also, the subplot with Martin Freeman, Everett Ross, I think, and Valentina, you could have cut that. That was so pointless. It was just I get why it's here, because you do want to have that connection to the US government with Wakanda. You want to keep developing that relationship between Shuri and Everett Ross, I guess. But it's also kind of you don't really need it. Also, speaking of Namor is fine, but I wasn't really in love with him. He kind of just felt like a lesser version of Killmonger. It was they basically want to do a similar-esque thing. Namor was fine. I don't understand the love for Namor that people have. He's good, but Also, I'll tell you what, the film was severely missing M'Baku, because when he shows up, when Winston Duke shows up as M'Baku, he's great. M'Baku is just one of, the best characters in the first Black Panther film, and he's great in Infinity War, and when he shows up in this, he's great, and I really like the dynamic he has with Shuri. In many ways, it's like he's trying to fill the older brother void, but he's also, offering her counsel and mentorship, and I think that stuff is really good. And the thing is, too, is that at the end, it basically seems like Shuri allows M'Baku to take the throne of Wakanda, which is fine, but I'd rather the film have us explicitly have a scene where Shuri basically gives the throne to M'Baku, rather than kind of just implying it. Also, speaking of things you didn't really need, Riri Williams was so pointless in this movie. I get it, narratively, she's important because she is the MacGuffin, but really, the whole, Ironheart thing just felt so tacked on, and it was kind of you don't really do much with Riri as a character in this film, so why is she in this? Because the whole thing just feels very kind of counterproductive. It's we're gonna have her here, so then when we do Ironheart, people will like her and be like, oh yeah, that girl from Wakanda Forever, let's go watch her show. But then she doesn't really do much in Wakanda Forever for me to go, oh wow, yeah, I want to see, this girl's story, I want to see her become Ironheart. It's I don't care. Also, not to mention the fact that the Ironheart suit design doesn't look great. And it's kind of I know they're probably saving the official costume for her show, but it's I don't care, because the thing they made her wear in Wakanda Forever just looks ugly and very Power Rangers-esque. And then getting to the film's ending, we basically find out that Nakia and T'Challa had a child, and the child is named T'Challa Jr., I'm guessing. And it's a thing where I like it, and I like the idea of T'Challa having a child, because that post-credit scene was kind of, like, impactful. I watched it, and I was like, yeah, okay, I'm missing Chadwick. I'm feeling the tribute here. I really, really respect and appreciate that. But then also, it's weird because it's like, oh yeah, we can do T'Challa stories now because we have T'Challa's son. We just have to age him up somehow. And whilst I do find that to be nice and sweet, I do kind of just... The weird conundrum that Wakanda Forever faces is, should they have just recast T'Challa anyway, rather than kind of just making this tribute film? Because T'Challa is really important. You could tell the MCU was setting him up to be a very powerful and important character in the universe. And to just have a film where he dies at the beginning and you do this big celebration, this big funeral, I don't know. It's weird because Chadwick Boseman to me was iconic as T'Challa. He had the potential to be the next Robert Downey Jr., the next Chris Evans, the next Chris Hemsworth, the actor that defines this role for a generation, because he was fantastic. You watch Black Panther, you watch Civil War, you watch the other Avengers films he appears in. He has a presence, he has an authority, he has a charisma. He's amazing. And to lose that, unfortunately, it's horrible, but then also the actor is there to serve the character, not the other way around. And the approach with Wakanda Forever to not recast T'Challa, but to instead kill off T'Challa, it feels kind of counterintuitive in a way. And it's a really tough and kind of morbid decision to make in a weird way, because at the end of the day, the best thing I feel the MCU should have done is reboot after Endgame. I know that's the unpopular opinion, but it's kind of like Endgame felt like such a natural conclusion, and now that Disney and Marvel have the ability to use, say, the X-Men, the Fantastic Four, having those characters just suddenly pop into a universe now that's already been formed for like 10 plus years, is just a bit weird. And then of course you did lose, say, T'Challa, and just it makes a universe, whilst feel kind of lived in, it also just limits its potential for telling other stories in the future. And it's kind of like, maybe the MCU should have rebooted, because then a recast of T'Challa would have been more tasteful, I guess. Or maybe just not even make the movie for a while. I don't know. Because whilst I like the ideas Wakanda Forever presents, whilst I like the overall story for Shuri in Wakanda Forever, it is just missing a T'Challa-shaped hole. You feel Chadwick Boseman's presence not there, and you kind of go, this is just a movie about the side characters. Black Panther Wakanda Forever is my least favorite Ryan Coogler film, but that doesn't mean I think it's a bad film. I just think I'm conflicted, because there's a lot of stuff here that I enjoyed and I really did like, specifically Shuri's character arc, but there's also just a lot of things about it, like, it is too long. I am missing T'Challa as a character. There is kind of just this meandering nature towards it. I don't really care for Riri Williams. Riri Williams is basically pointless in this movie, and it's kind of like, I don't know. But those are just my thoughts on Black Panther Wakanda Forever. What are yours? Let me know in the comments down below. Like, subscribe, follow me on social media, all that good stuff. Until we meet again, I'll see you guys next time.